So, brethren, it's a pleasure being here once again. And tonight, I'll be speaking on summary number 5. It's a rather short summary, and the topic is highlights some other major reasons for the differences between mainstream Christianity and all SDA movements. In addition, it seeks to highlight some of the strategy used by the Seventh-day Adventists to brainwash their members. Please note that all scriptures will be read from the King James Version Bible only. So as starts, brethren. Although the Bible clearly shows that God has dealt with humanity differently in different time frames called dispensation, the Seventh-day Adventist movements have denied that this is so. This fallacious position they have taken in order to allow themselves room to choose their doctrines from any part of the Bible. Moreover, to justify their untenable position, they claim that they believe in the whole Bible, while they deny the dispensational dealings of God. To prove their folly, I quote two of the available texts which contradict their doctrinally untenable position. The following highlights. So one, I'm reading from John chapter 1, verse 17, which says, "For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ." And the second text, Luke chapter 16, verse 16, which says, "The law and the prophets were until John. Since that time, the kingdom of God is preached, and every man presseth into it." Now, the quotations surely highlight the fact that the dispensation of grace and truth, which is synonymous with the dispensation of the kingdom of God, is distinct from the dispensation called the law and prophets, as Luke chapter 16, verse 16 states. Another area of major difference between Orthodox Christianity and all Seventh-day Adventist movements, which are aligned to Mrs. White, is the area of God's plan of salvation. For while God's plan of salvation was foreordained before the foundation of the world, as 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 20, and Titus chapter 1, verse 2 states, with divine action taken from the foundation of the world, as Hebrew chapter 4, verse 3, and Revelation chapter 13, verse 8 states, the Seventh-day Adventist movement's plan, which essentially emanates from Mrs. Ellen G. White's visions and views, was only initiated after man sinned. So, brethren, while Apostle Peter and Paul claim that God's Lamb, Jesus Christ, was foreordained before the foundation of the world, as 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 20, and Titus chapter 1, verse 2 says, Mrs. White's version was first thought of after man sinned, thanks to the early writings on pages 149. Imagine if you will, brethren, Mrs. White's claim that Jesus had to plead with his father on 3 occasions before his father accepted his plan of salvation, which was based upon the merits of Christ's blood plus obedience to the law of God. That is in her early writings on page 149. This, brethren, is the genesis of the marriage between the law of God and the grace of God. Moreover, this explains the reason why most of the Seventh-day Adventist doctrines are Old Testament based, with some New Testament texts conveniently used to gain acceptability as mainstream Christianity. Now, in an attempt to stem the criticism which I just mentioned with the false foundation good in sight, their frontline leaders prepare brainwashing lessons written in periodicals called quarterlies. These quarterlies form the basis of the movement's indoctrinative thrust. For in addition to the creation of these quarterlies, A teacher's quarterly is also prepared to reinforce the teachings in their quarterlies. By this method, therefore, the SDA's religion is cohesively held together. Now, when one observes that in these quarterlies, there are several lessons on the imperatives of keeping the law of God, if one wished to please God, can you imagine how law-bound one would become after a few months with that kind of brainwashing? That is my question, brethren. If one wished to please God, can you imagine how law-bound one would become after a few months with that kind of brainwashing? As strange as this may sound, the chief reason for their promotion of the Ten Commandments is the fact that the fourth commandment is included in it. Moreover, brethren, because of their desire to highlight the Sabbath as an inevitable requirement for salvation, in almost every text in which the term law or commandments is found in the Bible, attempts have been made to capitalize on those verses by giving them a typical Seventh-day Adventist treatment. Just enter into a religious discussion with an Adventist and try to convince him or her concerning God's plan of salvation. And that individual would always gravitate conversationally to some law or commandment related text. This they do in order to get to the Sabbath issue. Try it, brethren, and you will see for yourselves. For those who are strong. Now, even when you convince them of their false interpretation of one text, they simply jump to another law or commandments related text. Now, if even you convince them of their untenable position on that new text, they simply leapfrog to another law related text. This is true of all SDA adherents. Now, while they claim that they believe the Bible, the truth of the matter is they believe in the Bible as interpreted by the producers of the lessons in their quarterlies. Brethren, since these quarterlies are prepared by the intellectuals in the movement, you can be sure that the lessons and texts chosen will always be tailored to securing perpetuation and growth of the movement. This method of brainwashing is very effective indeed, and is partly responsible for the growth of the SDA movement worldwide. Other areas of operation of this religious outfit are in health and education. Now, while their work in these areas is laudable, the reasons for the establishment of these enterprises must be of concern to the inquirer. For while they project the idea that their health institutions were created to help humanity, Mrs. White, their revered prophetess, had a different reason for their creation. She reasoned, if the movement did not acquire its own medics, their members would be at risk of being influenced by doctors who were of other religious persuasions. Their health trust with medical facilities, therefore, was primarily embarked upon to arrest the fallout which such a lack of such facilities would have caused. Their educational institutions, while created to do educationally for them, what their health facilities did for them in the area of healthcare also allowed them the opportunity to indoctrinate their members and sympathizers from the elementary stage up to the tertiary level. In addition, these institutions provide lifelong employment and other opportunities and so cushion their members from undue exposure to other doctrinal beliefs in the workplace. As I come to an end of tonight's segment, brethren, yet another strategic area of operation is that of the production of and dissemination of literature. Accordingly, law-related tracts are placed in public offices and waiting rooms with a view to introducing their religion to the public. In addition to those mentioned strategies, by going from house to house, their colporteurs use that window of opportunity to introduce their religious beliefs into homes as they service their client. Lastly, but by no means least, they expand their membership by holding crusades for long periods, by dealing with emotional topics and giving personal inducements. They seduce many who are unskilled in the word into joining their ranks. So, brethren, this is a summary of some of the reasons for the differences between mainstream Christianity and Seventh-day Adventist movements. Also shared for you are some of the strategies used by the movement to brainwash their members and sympathizers. As I close, brethren, I trust the information would help you today, my dear online listeners, to understand the reasons for the differences in beliefs and the operation of the Adventist movements and those of mainstream Christianity. As can be seen, their doctrinal positions run perpendicular to those of mainstream Christianity. Therefore, there is no hope of any convergence between mainstream Christianity and all SDA movements as long as they maintain their cataloged, untenable doctrinal position. So that's the end of my segments tonight, brethren. I will be live next week again. Remember, brethren, prepare yourselves for Jesus Christ's return because he will be returning soon. So spend time in your holy Bibles and don't forget to do your devotions on a daily basis. Brethren, Jesus Christ loves you and I love you. So bye for now.